you can take it from there. Now, how about that champ? Well, that champ had a ground loop, and in the ground loop, the wing spar was bent. Now we've got the accident, right? Because it's a major structural flaw, major structural damage to the airplane. So the incidents, many, many times, they are not reportable to the FAA. Now, I've lost my arrow here. With the light. Let's see, hold on one second, bear with me.
Run some light on?
Hold on, I just gotta see if I get the right one here. I did. These are some examples that are not considered to be substantial damage. Whoops, that's interesting. I think I do need light. And we'll go back to the presentation here. Hold on, my apologies. Got it. Okay, thank you, Dennis. Oh my God. So here's some of the issues: accident versus incident. Again, no substantial damage, and the things that we talked about already. Let's jump ahead to the enforcement process. Not going to teach you to be lawyers here, but we're going to talk a little bit about what happens. Pilot court is before the NTSB. The National Transportation Safety Board has a number of administrative law judges, and if you do end up, if you can't settle a case with the FAA ahead of time through an informal conference, then you can go to an NTSB hearing. You can have your own attorney. The FAA will have their attorney, and if you're not happy with that result, you then can appeal to the National Transportation Safety Board. And if you're not happy with that, you can actually end up going all the way up to the Supreme Court.
Really?
Yeah, not a lot of times it happens, but it is possible. But there are a number of cases. In fact, if you Google pilot enforcement cases before the Supreme Court, some of those will come up to you in your search, I should say. So again, recap some of the things we've talked about. Obviously, fly safely. You know about AOPA's legal services. You don't have to join legal services to get some advice. If you're an AOPA member, you may call. They have people who will speak with you and counsel you. And again, our EAA Legal Advisory Council, if you call up to Oshkosh, the folks in our advocacy department will give you the name of an attorney whom you can contact, and it's generally somebody who's close to you geographically. When you get into a jam, I always tell people, I didn't do real estate. And real estate guys should not do FAA cases because they're very, very distinct. Just because you're a lawyer doesn't mean you're any good at doing house closings or any things associated with that. This is always a good one. I know I was flying with my buddy and he said, hey, watch this. Whenever you hear that, that's a bad deal. Bad things are going to happen, right? You know that, obviously. So, obviously, aviation is great fun. We love it. It's why we're all here. I mean, I got my pilot's license. I decided to go to law school to do aviation law. It's just, we're all fanatics about it. But it can bite you. It can bite you badly. And having done a number of crash cases, litigation, defending pilots who are frankly no longer here, and hurt, injured, killed people, it can get pretty ugly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time about this, but it's fairly old news. Again, this is the Pilot's Bill of Rights. One of our great advocates in aviation, Senator Jim Imhoff, died last year. He was a tremendous, tremendous advocate, a general aviation pilot himself. Came up, camped at Oshkosh every year, would speak. He worked with me and a number of other people on opposition to, well, if you remember back in the days when Bob Hoover, they brought that emergency case against Bob Hoover. That was a really nasty deal, and it really showed that we needed to get something to reel in this enforcement situation. So we got that, we did get the change to the FAA's utilization of their emergency powers of revocation. For a while, the FAA wanted to use civil penalties to go after pilots, which they can do that anyway, but in this case, in this civil penalty demonstration program, they wanted the judges to be their own chief counsel for litigation. So you got the wolf or the fox watching the henhouse situation. In any event, Jim got in trouble with the FAA, and when a U.S. senator gets in trouble, and when he's somebody like Jim Inhofe, and he gets treated badly, he responds, and the way he responded was with the Pilot's Bill of Rights. I'm not going to bore you with the detail, some of the quick things here is that it really set forth some procedures, so there would be some normalcy that FAA attorneys had to follow. It provided us with access to information that many, many times you never knew, depending upon the FAA office, when you would ask them for their investigative file. Some offices would give you virtually everything. Others would give you scraps of paper. That's all been codified, and it really helps us out right now. The procedure, again, enhanced fairness, and now we get to use the same rules, which was not the case before. Now the judges are supposed to follow the federal rules of procedure, which for those of us who practice law, that's a great thing because it basically levels the playing field. Mention these again, access to information, the ATC recordings, radar data. Again, sometimes the FAA would argue, no, there you can't have those for different types of reasons in any event. It's been absolutely fantastic. NOTAMs, at times the NOTAM system was a bit flawed. It's still not perfect. It's a lot better. I think you see it around here in the TFRs, how quickly they come out. And when there's a change in time, the FAA comes out, it advises of that time. So again, these systematic improvements have made a difference for us. Medical certification, the Pilot's Bill of Rights set forth again, all these types of things helped us when we're fighting a medical case, which really becomes so much less an issue of law and something in which lawyers should be involved, but it becomes oftentimes a disagreement between the medical folks in FAA and then generally our doctor that we have representing us. Talked about this, federal rules of procedure, federal rules of evidence, again, leveling the playing field. We can now go to real court if we're not happy with the whole administrative process. I shouldn't say real court, but the federal district court, which you do see more and more of these cases going on. Used to happen in the past that the FAA would call up an inspector and might just say, hey, look, I'd like to talk to you about something. Now there's in that situation is that you have to be advised that this may potentially lead to some type of an enforcement action. Doesn't necessarily mean that all the inspectors are doing it, but again, this is the way the scenario is supposed to go. And again, I'm giving you, from my perspective, you're hearing a lot of the negative. I will tell you that in reality, most of the inspectors are very honorable people. Many of them are pilots. They oftentimes sympathize with the individual, the airman they're speaking with. And it is, to some extent today, probably true that the FAA is probably there to help you and will oftentimes use remedial training if they can and avoid going down the highway of enforcement. Oh, this is just the whole, this is, and I know you can't read, well, I guess maybe you can there, but you can see that these are the things that now come up with the Equal Access to Justice Act. Basically, it's again, it's leveling the playing field. We've mentioned this, provide the evidence. All the access to the towers, flight service station, you get all of that information. The medical certification side of things, and I'm not going to keep you here all night, we're getting close to the end. A lot of minefields, tremendous amount of minefields in medical certification. And you'll notice here, and this is great, Pilot's Bill of Rights, written notification. It really tells you up front what happens with this information that you submit, and that if you inaccurately state anything, or if you even purposely misstate something, it can lead to some fairly dire consequences. I'm going to let this play up on the screen here. And you can see that fraudulent statements, misrepresentations, there's potentials for monetary penalties and even for jail sentences. Now, if you misrepresent something on a medical, I've not seen where they throw you in jail. They usually just turn to a revocation. But there are people who unfortunately have taken some leeway with statements and the like. Not often you're going to see this, but it is a possibility. Medical history. This is oftentimes a very, very difficult one, and it's amazing. Do we have any AMEs here? Okay, great. What are you seeing patients coming in, filling out this section? Do they realize the magnitude of what they're answering here?
I don't think so.
No, because you might say, well, yeah, I had that little thing, but hell, that's no big deal. And then, God forbid, something comes up and you do have to produce some medical records. And the FAA folks are taking a look at it and something comes up that, hey, this individual did not disclose something to us. So, you know, we like to kind of run through these things and tick off the little boxes, no, 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 but please read these very, very carefully because it is important. And then that next one there, arrest, conviction, and/or administrative action history. Again, if you've been involved in a DUI of some type, or a speeder, or whatever it might be, that you did end up having to go to some traffic school or some follow-up with the state, you should get some advice before you answer that. Did somebody have a question? Yes, sir.
I didn't have a question, I was just gonna make a statement about that, because, you know, I know you said you're Amy, but you can do just as much harm by entering things, by making your own diagnosis, or just because you're taking something. So you have to be really careful, this is only my opinion, not to put in things that, like you're making your own diagnosis when it hasn't
Right.
been formally diagnosed by a physician for whatever the situation.
And that's why you're always free to ask the AME. Don't check that box off. If you've got a question, ask the AME, and you would provide advice to
Yeah.
someone.
No, but like a question directly, like, if he sees I'm taking amlodipine, and he says, do you have high blood pressure? My response to him is, no, maybe I do, or maybe I don't. My question to him would be, what is high blood pressure? So terms like that,
Mhm.
where you can say, where if you say, I might have high blood pressure because I'm taking a high blood,